liberation just have vastly different understandings of what liberation is for.
I haven't seen this much importance and attention.
The story itself is a really wonderful, really great setup.
Tractor beam has been engaged.
Hello and welcome to the Tractor Beam Comics Reviews on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. I pointed to that way too early on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. There we go. Today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. It is the 8th week of comics in the year 2024. We just got one book up on the docket today, so we'll dive into some more podcast area action as well. Before we do that, let's get the first off plugs. Follow kind of the Underworld books arm of the Underworld Network here at the Ion Cannon Pod at Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. It's on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And yeah, on this past Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, Joel and I talked about death. It was fun. And then I think next week, we're talking. Next week we're talking about The Last Jedi, because we want to for our 100th episode. So yeah, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel. I'll bring that up again at the end. Yeah, Mondays 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Chris, plug away.
Wow, 100 episodes. That's like something to celebrate, honestly. Most podcasts probably don't make it to 50, so 100 is a pretty awesome milestone. So pat yourself on the back for that one, because that's pretty awesome.
We will on Monday. This is Chris. How's it going, Chris? How are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. We got a really nice batch of Star Wars news this week. So especially today as we're recording, a couple really awesome things came out. Some things I don't even want to talk about yet because they're not really official.
Right.
Or at least the normal Star Wars channels have not officially put them out, but they're on Comixology. Yeah, we'll talk about the solicits on another podcast.
Or something, we'll see when we get to maybe we'll talk about it on Monday. But plug your stuff where you're in the internet.
Yeah, I'm on YouTube talking about Bad Batch. It's Bad Batch era. It's Bad Batch season time. So you want your companion videos going along to watching a video like, oh, I want to hear somebody talking about some cool thing that happened. You go to youtube.com/StarRaptor and you'll find my commentary, my punditry on the latest happenings in the Bad Batch universe. So check that out. Check out my Twitter handle, which is also at StarRaptor, for general things like that and a lot more gaming stuff over there that I'm commenting on. But yeah, that's it.
There we go. Great joke by your comrade in arms there, Ben. Nice batch of stuff. Definitely not bad. Well done. Francesco, yes, we start at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday night, because Wednesdays are for comics and comics are for Wednesdays, is how I got the branding going. We might as well dive right in. Just one book today. But what a book it was. You got the cover. There's upside down, Chris. There we go. And also show on the back. Just quickly show the back.
I gotta keep this up. Django,
gotta keep this up. Gotta keep this
hopefully
photo.
You got that guy right there. See him? That's Jango Fett right there.
There we go. So I'm just declaring this Jango Fett is the official character of the Tractor Beam. But anyway, he's not in this comic. This comic is set a couple decades after he's dead. But anyway, this is ongoing, number 43, written by Charles. Or is it set millennia before? Ongoing 43. You see what I did there? Written by Charles Soule, art by Stephen Cummings, Jethro Morales, and Wayne Faucher. Colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. Cover by Steven Segovia and Rain Barreto. A Sith in the Mind's Eye. Luke Skywalker is trapped deep behind enemy lines, hunted by a rogue Sith who sees the nascent Jedi Knight as his chance at a new ascendancy. How will Luke survive? And who will he be if he does? This was one of those rare moments, pauses to be introspective, to meditate. Doesn't move any sort of story along in terms of the actual main plot line, but it moves this character along in a significant way. It does a lot more than any kind of single issue story would. Luke, he has another vision. He has this vision in this kyber crystal on Christophsis, or he found it on Christophsis. And yeah, I mean, I thought, I'll just jump right to it. My mind goes to thinking, this is his second shot at a Dagobah cave experience, because the first time, Yoda says, you bring in your lightsaber, bring in your blaster, and you face Darth Vader and you hack his face off, and you see yourself, and you see the destruction that you wrought upon yourself. This time, I mean, he's unconscious. He doesn't, I mean, I guess he sort of has a lightsaber, but it's not the main focus. He comes in with empathy. He comes in with compassion, comes in with seeing the good in this ancient Sith character that's trapped, whose kind of consciousness or story or kind of holocron-esque essence is trapped in this kyber crystal. And he goes into this character's past and comforts them when they're alone, and as a kid being bullied, and all through this story he's able to be present, at least with the memory of this ancient Sith character. And then of course he confronts the descendant of the Sith, namely his father, Anakin Skywalker. Darth Vader, like a vision of Vader again shows up, and that's why very much this cave experience. But he's armed with empathy. He's armed with compassion. He's armed with a sense, first of all, the Vader image. I mean, it's his own subconscious preparing him. It's the Force preparing him for what we see in Return of the Jedi. Definitely the beeline to Return of the Jedi. His own, which he prepares and says, "My son, not now, my son." He's confronting him, and this amazing moment of, it's my destiny to face you. It's your destiny to face me, and for me to see the good in you. And he's armed with that instead. And yeah, I mean, it definitely predicts, it foreshadows, I mean, not really, because the film came out in 1983, but it prepares Luke for what he's about to do. We see he's prepared for it, even before, again, going back to Dagobah, before the whole debate on Dagobah with Obi-Wan and Yoda and the Force ghosts on the log, and I guess Yoda in the hut too. Preparing him to see the good in Vader and to not strike him down, even though, I mean, we know he's tempted in the moment when he mentions Leia, but Vader does on the Death Star. But yeah, it was one of those very clear, very reflective, introspective issues, and one of those compelling things. And it finally answers the question, what's the relationship to be with this run to Return of the Jedi? Well, here we really see it. And then of course, Chris, I think you want to talk about the crystal. He pulls out a crystal. I don't know which is that, the crystal or it's a different crystal, and it's green and it's there. And so even in the vision, he has the Anakin lightsaber, but it's a green blade. Kind of there's a way of, people talk about sixth sense, people talk about premonition. I mean, science talks about it being just our brain subconsciously calculating possibilities that maybe happen to come to pass. In the gobbledygook of the Force, it could be the Force pushing them forward, pulling them forward. And it's one of those things that, the Force, I mean, we know he has visions of Luke and Han on Bespin. This is another kind of thing where he's prepared himself for what is to come. The Force is preparing. So yeah, I've spoken a lot. It was really, really fascinating issue. I'm not sure I'm gonna rank it as like the all be all end all, because Soul's Vader ones are amazing. But yeah, this is definitely in that vein, in that genre, and it fits well in that genre. So I've spoken a lot. Chris, what about this issue stands out to you? Not just the blade, the kyber crystal, but everything else too.
Yeah, Matthew. So I told you this is a seminal comic in the Star Wars mainline. I mean, we get a few and far between Luke storylines, and I feel whenever we do get Luke as the center stage, there's usually something very big, something very impactful. Because out of all the characters in this era, he is the guy that we're all looking forward to. As like, okay, how does he transfer from this farm boy mentality to this young Jedi Knight, as we see in Return of the Jedi? I think we're going to look back in Return of the Jedi and think about this very comic book issue right here. Well, it's a two-parter, right? It's a duology with the last issue tying together. And it feels like there's a lot of weight behind it. It feels like there's a lot of gravitas. I said this in my review. This felt like Vader issue number 25 from Charles Soule Run. Very introspective, very ethereal, but very, as you said, like very character focused. Yeah, it's not pushing the whole plot of the rebellion or anything like that, but it is picking up the pieces where Luke has been. I know Joel in the chat was saying, you know, something along the lines of, do these comics go into more on why Luke thinks Vader should be redeemed outside of he's my dad and Luke has compassion? I forget. They kind of dive into it a little bit, I guess you could say, from that point, like pertaining to the Sith Lord, and about how every person, even if they are evil at one point they weren't evil. At one point they were maybe misaligned with something, or there's hope in everybody. And I think Luke even doubles down on Vader after dealing with this Sith Lord, and you could see that. And this issue in its own right, its theme, its merit, its motto, whatever you want to call it, is how do you deal with pain? And I love how they dealt with like the whole severed arm, bringing it back to Empire Strikes Back and really making that a focus point on this Sith Lord, trying to, you know, kind of get Luke to agree with him, like, hey, you know, you're never going to forget that. That's always going to be something you'll look at and you'll be raging forever because your hand will never be back the way it was. And Luke is saying there's always a different path. You can go forward, you can go backward, whatever. It's like, but I liked that focus on the story about Luke as a character that is damaged, and about how he has to heal somebody. And just the whole, as said last time we talked about this storyline, the whole idea of him dealing with this Falinasi people, which are from Legends. They're, I think they were from Jeddah or something like that, and they have some force sensitivity, but it's going inside the crystal, the labyrinth of this kyber crystal, to heal it. And you have wonderful things happening, such as this green blade igniting, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is the first time we're really like seeing Luke with the green blade, everybody. So this is really interesting. And then we see him there at the end with the green kyber crystal. But the stuff of him, it's just so artistically done. This comic book, it looks amazing. Just the spreads. We had two different artists on this.
The big cast,
Jethro Morales. Great job penciling on this one, and everybody else on the creative team with the art, because it really comes together well. And it feels, even though there are two different artists, I couldn't really even tell. It just seems seamless to me. And it's just that fever dream of Luke fighting Darth Vader at one point in Cloud City, and just the great narration overlays of like him seeing all the people that he has lost, including his mother at birth, which was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. Like going from there to the Owens, to Obi-Wan, to Han and Carbonate, who he might as well think is dead at this point, right?
Owen and Umbroo. Joel, I was gonna show you this photo. Just want to jump in. We mentioned on Monday, no mention of Owen and Brew. There, he has a memory of their skeletons being burned. So there's an example. Sorry.
Yeah. So I absolutely love that attention to detail, and just seeing. Yes, Luke has been through a lot in his life, his very young life already. He's been through a lot of loss, a lot of pain, but you don't have to deal with pain by having more pain and more anger and more aggression. There's a way to get by that. And I love those scenes when there's those spiraled panels, and it's just this great layout of like this fractured kyber crystal or something like that. And it's just Luke showing his compassion in every single one of those images, whether it be the baby or the young teenager that's getting, looked at as an outcast for being a wizard or whatever. There's just so many great points at every point. Luke was saying, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And that's the Luke I've come to love. That's the Luke we see in Return of the Jedi, solidified as being a Jedi Knight, a Jedi Master, because he's dealing with compassion. He's throwing away his lightsaber. you'll never do this to me, to the Emperor, or whatever. So yeah, this is a great comic book that has a lot of depth to it.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to see where this goes, in the future now after this big moment for Luke.
Right. I mean, in line with what what we were talking about on Monday, Joel and I on the podcast, the contrast between dark side and light side in their approach to suffering and death. The dark side uses suffering, like Vader uses suffering as this spur to inflict suffering on others, to say to blame, to to cast blame, to resent, to fuel that hatred that drives them to greater power. Whereas the light side, and we see with Luke, I mean, every instance of that, uh, pain fuels compassion, fuels closeness, fuels drive towards someone to connect with them. I mean, that's the word compassion literally means to suffer with, and it's I mean, it's the message that George has been pushing on us since 1977, is that life has suffering, life has loss, but here I'm preaching again, guys. It's Lent. Life has suffering, life has loss. Instead of one-upping each other, let's actually use those stories of suffering and loss as a reason to draw together and gather together, because the healing force, and that's the title of this comic, is the healing force, which is, it's not the living force, the cosmic force, the healing force, whatever. It's the force that heals, that binds people together, and that separation is that loss. It really reflects on this. I'll go into this. This does build on Joel's question. It's a great question. The use of this ancient Sith Lord as, I mean, as a spur, as a way into this conversation. It shows that Luke can have compassion on the Force echo, whatever it is, essence, whatever this kyber thing is, of a person that doesn't exist anymore. It's been dead for millennia. Can have compassion even in that moment, seeing that story. How much more is he going to have compassion for his father? Because, and this isn't selfish. This is just understanding himself and encapsulating himself. If he has, I mean, that's the whole point with Empire and Return of the Jedi. That's why, the whole point is, if he can have compassion for this random being, whatever, he can definitely have compassion for his father, for his own flesh and blood, because it's also then having compassion for himself and where he comes from, his own origins.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I mean, that's the thing, we need both. And that is Luke's story, that is Luke's journey. You talked about at the top how he goes from being a farm boy who just wants adventure to being this Jedi who can throw away his lightsaber out of compassion for his father. That's the journey, that's the arc, and that's, again, George saying, let's step forward. Younger people stepping out, and young people stepping out into a new adventure, into the new world. It isn't simply for adventure and excitement. It's for compassion for others, and then learning to receive that for yourself in your own way. Of course, I mean, Anakin dies at the end, but it's really well. I mean, it's so, if we want a beeline to Return of the Jedi, first of all, I will say, we do get Ignite the Green here.
Yeah.
But we get it in the context of him chucking the saber. So it's this perfect thing of saying, almost, I mean, to say, well, first of all, to say how far off that is, how uncharacteristic that moment with his nephew is. And I'm not knocking the moment. I'm not knocking Last Jedi, of course, but I'm saying that, that is clearly this shock, because we do that. We do have these moments that are just completely off from who we are and who we care about and what we're on about. Clearly something must have provoked that. But also to say, it's amazing coming back, and we get Ignite the Green in Mandalorian, and it makes sense. He's going to save the kid. I don't mind that, but I really love that this is where we get it first, chronologically at least now, and it's about him throwing away the lightsaber. So, again, the beeline. It's amazing that we get the beeline. Not the first time thing we get of the beeline isn't, oh yeah, they're masking their Sullust or whatever. I mean, we've gotten reference to the second Death Star already, but there's we don't. It's not so much story. It's not even plot. It's character first. The character beeline versus before that prepares them for all the events that happen. So, yeah, Charles, you're in charge. You know what you're doing. Yeah, and also to say this wraps up. Yeah, like you mentioned, this 2-issue arc. What did you think of the arc as a whole? I know it's just 2 issues.
Yeah, the arc was fantastic. It was what this character needs. It's what this character needs is to go from point A to point B and having some introspection. We don't get to have this fortune all the time about having a comic book dive this heavily into a character specifically, especially in an ensemble comic. That's been my complaint is you have so many different characters and not everybody gets their time to shine as often as we would like. So the idea that in this relatively limited run, I don't think this is going to go to 75 issues like the first run.
It'll go
they
to
still
50.
give Luke like these 2 issues that were like, okay, this is one of the big major moments we're going to see in his career here. I do like that he sees Anakin. I think that does help and go the extra mile with him getting
about that
to
moment.
see, he sees Anakin, and that will help him even more so know, like, Vader, I know what's inside of you. I've seen you. I've seen your person before you became this black clad monstrosity. So that gives him more credence to fight even harder to redeem him or help him get redeemed at the
Page
end.
of the week. Hold on. Here's a spoiler. Ignore this. Here's a spoiler. All right, there you go. Yeah. Love it. There we go. I mean, it makes me think, I mean, we keep talking about a Force Ghost in live action in Ahsoka or Mandalorian or whatever. I mean, yeah, that we do want that, but here this vision and the Force, I mean, it's almost to say, I mean, I don't want to go too far down this road, but it's a reminder that Anakin gets to be a Force Ghost because Padme and Luke saw the light and held on to it. And so I mean, Anakin owes his service to the light to Padme and to Luke. Yeah. So
that's one way I like that thought about positioning it that way, that the others want him so badly to turn to the light that the Force Ghost appears to them specifically. I would like to think that's how it would work.
Yeah. Prayed enough times to get him through purgatory. There we go. No, I'm just kidding. Dumb joke. There we go. Although to the point, it's a great image of how, again, here's my theology time. Here I go. I mean, the Anakin's whole thing about being able to be a Force Ghost, like I said, it points to how, our ability to serve the light, it depends on others always depends on others. I mean, in Master Apprentice, Qui-Gon has this amazing, a lot of amazing thoughts about how his service to the light depends on his Padawan Obi-Wan. So, yeah, yeah, a lot to chew on there. Do you have any last thoughts on ongoing number 43 before we go to it's the trial of Lando's coming up after this? So,
say what you will. I've voiced my opinions already on that whole thing. I know you can't wait. I'm just like, oh, I hope this is a lot more than in my head. I'm just thinking, oh, there's gonna be another 4 months of Lando. I hope this is not just padding for them to like space out time
to get to the number 50.
Exactly. Like let's make this impactful. I really want this to be as impactful as this Luke story was.
Yeah, I mean, we know Vader's in it.
Oh, true.
So, you never know. You never know what's gonna happen there. But I mean, I'll enjoy it as a story because it's Charles Soule finally doing a little drama. But yeah, I do see what you mean. Is it gonna we still want to make sure it's moving towards Return of the Jedi. I do think, I mean, everything he said about number 50. I think again, Joel having this comment, more things are wrapping up. I think that's
Yeah.
reference to the solicits, the Vader solicits, which I haven't looked at yet, but I'll give that a peek. Yeah, I mean, what Charles was saying about how number 50 is this maxi issue, or a large size issue, I think that's the end. And so we're at 43 now. It's February. Yeah, bring it home. 2024, and then 2025.
Bring it home. Sitting in whatever that room number was at New York Comic Con.
Yes.
And all will be revealed in 2024 later this year. You and
There
me
we
will
go.
be sitting there and being like, yeah, we finally did it. We finally got there.
This would be a beeline. There would be a
Oh, the
beeline. I mean,
app.
that's when this kind of would happen, I guess.
It's got to be with this trial. I'm telling you, I had that theory where it was like they're gonna have this trial at Tanab. And it's gonna be interrupted.
And the trial
by...
is the Battle of Tanab.
No, like the trial is all whatever. I don't know if Tanab is a planet or a space station above a planet, but like all of a sudden it's like red alert, and all of a sudden the fleet comes in, the fleet finds the rebels, and it's like we need every able-bodied person, and Orlando's just like, oh, give me one more shot, and then it becomes a general there. I don't know.
Maybe fun times. All right, so that does it for comics. So we will say one thing. 2 Star Wars adjacent comics came out this week. Captain Marvel number 5, at least 2.
How's that going?
I don't know. Captain Marvel number 5. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a pretty cool run. Written by Alyssa Wong. Sounds familiar. Art by Yam Bazaldua. Cover also by Steven Segovia and Romulo Fajardo Jr. So all 4 of those have done Star Wars recently. The Flurkin in the Captain Marvel comics, the Flurkin's name is Chewie. I know in the films it's Goose because don't want it to be too confusing, and also a nice nod to not Monica, her mother, but in the comics, Flurkin's name is Chewie. There we go. Yeah, and it's kind of this kind of weird Star Warsy story. Yeah, I mean it's connected. It's a lot like, anyway. I have thought of doing a Carol Core podcast one day. But maybe we'll do that one day. Also, as I mentioned last week, Hickman's Gods number 5 came up. Mateus Manhanini, who also he did the cover for a comic from last week, a Star Wars comic. I think the Vader number 43. He did the cover for that. So he did the cover for Gods number 5. That's a wild comic. That's Hickman being Hickman. Again, if Hickman did a Star Wars, can you imagine? What would it be? That's a question to chew on. Chris, your homework for next week, and I'll do it too. If Hickman wrote a Star Wars, what do you want it to be?
I haven't read enough of his stuff to actually even know what style's about, if I'm being honest.
See, he's just out there in his scope and his scale and everything. Anyone watching in the comments or later on, and I'll probably maybe tweet this from the EOC Twitter or something. Maybe tweet it at some folks. If Jonathan Hickman wrote a Star Wars,
what is the one image story he wrote, this independent story about kids in a school and then some crazy disaster happens? Like, that's the only thing I think I've read. I got trade paperback
in Star Wars, or is it something else?
No, this is John Hickman wrote this story. I think it was Image Comic Label.
Oh, it was Image.
Oh,
yeah.
And
I know, like, he wrote this thing about like this assassin school.
No, it wasn't
that I read.
It was like, yeah, I don't know, some weird stuff.
Like,
but
he wrote Powers of 10, House of X, Powers of 10, all that. He's written lots of. He's just wild out. It would be some weird, like, Dawn of the Jedi Force thing happening that would actually still work as a narrative, and that's the amazing thing. So, yeah, that's what I want him to do, the Dawn of the Jedi tie-in, or like a Dawn of the Force, something, or the Birth of the Force. That's what I want him to do. He'll never do that. Nobody will do that. We don't want to see that in Star Wars. Maybe we do. I don't know. It's a good question. Anyway, yeah. So that does it for comics. Something else dropped today. Something happened today. Apparently, this show called The Bad Batch dropped, and we got a few minutes to talk about it. I finally was able to watch it. Yes, we're joining the podcast area on a comics podcast. Why not? Just the instant reaction from for these 3 episodes, Chris. What was your take? What was your reaction? What stood out to you?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I liked as much as I like the 9 p.m. viewings of Star Wars live action show, there's something special about sitting down with my bowl of cereal in the morning as soon as I got up and had it on the big screen.
Yeah.
Dawn is coming up and it's like, yeah, this is like the old school watching
Right.
cartoons with my breakfast here. So there's something special with that whole experience
You're a
of
morning
watching it. But
person.
yeah, as far as the content itself, I really enjoyed. I like how we got the 3 episodes and how they took their time, granted. It wasn't
Yeah.
just, oh, let's just have whiz bang fun. Like that first episode was very
Mhm.
slow. And it's not characteristic of a lot of Star Wars animation to
Right.
go that slow. And to just almost be, I got a sense of the Andor feeling from that first episode with just the idea of how it's set up with Omega. And then that second episode, yeah, okay, we're revisiting things with Wrecker, seeing more clones was really cool. Hearing Daniel Logan's voice and
Yeah.
getting justified by calling that out as I watch it and seeing his name in the credits. Like, yep, I know that voice from anywhere. I've seen enough Clone Wars to know that voice.
Yeah.
And oh man, that third episode, Palpatine showing up already.
Ian McDiarmid himself, right? That's got to be Ian
Yes.
McDiarmid. Yeah.
He sounds as good as ever.
Yeah.
The thing is, like with Rogue One, you could tell that, James Earl Jones he's getting up there in age. Ian McDiarmid, he doesn't lose a beat when it comes to playing Palpatine. He sounds just as threatening and as lively as ever, in my opinion.
As lively, especially when they're cloning him.
Exactly. Like this is the great
Reanimating his corpse.
yes, and I just about screamed a little when they mentioned Project Necromancer from the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary. Like, yes, we're getting this interstitial, really obscure code names and everything. This is the Star Wars canon junkie in me going,
There we go.
this is all connected. This is great. But like the actual character story with Crosshair, with Omega, just the acting and nuance of these episodes done in animation, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Project Necromancer, was that mentioned? I think it was mentioned in Rogue One. There's like the list of the secret projects, right? With Project Stardust. I think. I feel like that. I feel like I've heard it audibly. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I'm just saying things on the internet right now. Yeah. I mean, well, you talk about the slow. It wasn't in Rogue One. Thanks. Okay, fair enough, Joel. Where have I seen it? Where have I actually heard it? Why does it sound familiar?
He said it was in Mandalorian.
Oh, I heard it in Mandalorian.
Oh,
That's why. Oh, because of what's his face?
Oh yeah.
Dr. Pershing must have mentioned it or something. One of those guys. Anyway, yeah, you talk about that slow opening. Just the dark, eerie drudgery.
Yep.
But also the heaviness of the dark side on Mount Tantus. It's just they're kind of like the Plagueis-esque. They're monkeying with life. They're monkeying with the Force, and whenever you do that, you incur this heaviness. And then the shadow, playing with shadow, Kevin Kiner being Kevin Kiner, or the Kiners being the Kiners. That moment, I mean, to me, it reminded me of that moment I think it's in the second last Clone Wars episode, my favorite episode of the Clone Wars period. It's the Order 66, but the beginning when they're taking Maul out, and they're capturing, just a very incredibly slow moment, symbolic. Yeah, it had that feel to it. I mean, also the epilogue to Clone Wars with Vader on the snow there. That kind of slow, that pacing. Yeah, it was really amazing way to start a season. It's a risky way to start a season. You could have lost people.
Yeah.
If you weren't already invested in it. But yeah, they did it, and they did a great job. I admit I was looking for the big reveal and whatnot. And yet it's one of those things where I've mentioned this before. If it's something you can predict, but it's done well, just because it isn't a surprise. Like, I wasn't actually really surprised by anything to do with Omega being force sensitive or even the connections to Project Necromancer. I was a little surprised as a message to you that they went that far into actually mentioning and showing us, yes, this is connected to the Rise of Skywalker. It was surprised, and I like how they didn't show what's in that vault there. We don't know
Yeah.
if that's Snoke's in a jar, Palpy's in a jar, who knows what.
The specimen. Who is the original specimen that they keep referring to?
Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and so it's good that they don't show that. Maybe they'll show that this season. Maybe they won't. I don't know. I want them to preserve some mystery here, all the way past the end. I don't want them to full on say some things, but it's also nice that they're actually not pretending, not pretending that we don't know what's happening here. So, um, yeah, and that's fair. If it's just dangling it for no good reason,
Yeah.
keeping on dangling, I can see that. But I like the mystery. But yeah, like I'm saying, it's nice that they just don't ignore what we're all thinking, because they've led us to think that way. It's their fault that we think this, and so they make good on it. So, yeah, and especially Omega being able to grow up and take the lead, take charge. I mean, that fits with everything we've seen with her. I liked how they showed the passage of time just
Yeah.
subtly with the hair.
Yeah.
That was just a well done
That was
little
cool.
movement. Yeah,
So
like I
we're
said,
thinking like it's been obviously like months then.
yeah, I've
They
been a few
first show her when
months.
she first gets there, it seems like, and then
Yeah.
it's literally like maybe 6 months or something.
Yeah, it's been a number of months. Even Wrecker, he seems to be able to talk better for some reason. I've noticed that. I
Oh,
thought he was,
really?
yeah, like he's a bit more articulate. Maybe because he has to kind of do a bit of what Tech was
Oh,
doing.
and then there's a
Yeah.
little foreshadowing, I feel like, to
Mm.
Crosshair because she had mentioned like, "Oh, your hand is shaking more now."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is the guy that his job was to be a surgeon with a blaster.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
his whole meaning was to be the most steady shot, and
Mhm.
for him to lose that one ability
Yeah.
that he depends on more than any other is have a steady hand, like, that'll do something to you psychologically,
Yeah, it
you
will.
know?
Yeah.
So that whole thing is like, oh, down the line, we're seeing that these clones
Mhm.
are degenerating. I don't know if I read that in canon or not, but like it seems like
I mean, that's
generally
what
the
clones do.
the clones, I guess, they just have like a
Mhm.
shelf date, and eventually they
Yeah.
start to go bad.
Yeah. We got a few ideas here. What's happening is Omega. I mean, we think Omega just has the M count, and I had to pause. I was like, they said M count. Did I? And I had to go back because I missed
Yeah.
that. Okay, M count. Midi-chlorians, guys. That's the word midi-chlorians in this film called The Phantom Menace in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Qui-Gon Jinn takes a blood sample of Anakin Skywalker. Says he has midi-chlorians, and he explains to Anakin what midi-chlorians are. Sorry, I'm being pedantic. Midi-chlorians, M count. Yeah, and so yeah, Joel's saying yeah, it's Omega has the M count getting fused into the Palpatine clone. The idea is that an eternal Palpatine, a resurrected Palpatine, a necromanced Palpatine can be can be force sensitive and use the force, not serve the force, but use the force is part of the point. So yeah, yeah, they went for it, and they're going for it in the season, hopefully. And I think from what I've heard, and the thing I keep on bringing back is the characters won't get subsumed into the lore. They'll be affected by the lore, but the actual character story will drive through. Yeah, I mean, we know Rex is coming. We know Ventress is coming. We've already had Rex name dropped again. I mean, we saw him previous season, so it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's already been in the show. That's not a big reveal. So who knows if there are any bigger reveals? But I don't want to get distracted by that. I do want to follow Omega and Crosshair specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my whole thing with this is we haven't seen a clone that's force sensitive since the Force Unleashed 2 with Galen Merrick Starkiller.
Interesting.
That was a whole big
didn't know
thing.
that.
I believe, to my knowledge, this is the first time in canon we are getting the idea that clones can be Force sensitive, and
Mhm.
there's been a lot of like really interesting Force lore going around recently in canon about how
Yes.
the Force can present itself in any living being. We've been told that, so it makes sense that Jango Fett wasn't Force sensitive to my knowledge, at least not
Mhm.
until somebody explores that. But so
Ethan, looking at you. Just kidding.
yes, exactly. It is what I'm referring to.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's interesting to know that okay, even a clone, a random clone, a 1 out of billion clones,
Mm.
could have the chance of being Force sensitive, even though the donor wasn't originally. So the Force
Yeah.
works in mysterious ways, and it's like the Force can serve the light. Or in
Yeah.
his time, it's like, oh my gosh, Omega's sole purpose is maybe to be the whole reason that Palpatine has a body that could survive his essence transfer. Like, this is pretty dark stuff.
Yeah. That's true. I don't think she's a random clone. I think she's meant to be kind of the end of the process, the end of
Okay.
the cloning process. Like all this cloning culminates into her. That's why she's called Omega. Boba is Alpha. She's Omega. But I was thinking this though. Yes, it's so Omega is maybe we don't know, not necessarily, because there's still Grogu. They're still experimenting on Grogu. Um, the beginnings it has a part to play in, yes, Palpatine getting um well, here's the real thing. Here's the real treat. Palpatine getting his body back. But of course, Palpatine oh gosh, what's his name? His son. What's his name?
Something with a D, right? Dagon or something
Yeah,
like that?
Dagon Ray. Ray, of course, is defeats Palpatine and takes on the name Skywalker, and is when all the Jedi are done. Dathan, thank you, Joel. When all the Jedi are done, uh, the Jedi are done. She and the Sith are done, and the First Order is done, and the Final Order is done. She is the one preserving the Jedi line. She is the next Jedi and the successor, keeping the flame of serving the light alive. So Omega, yes, through the suffering of Palpatine, but that's I liked Ray from Nowhere, but there's something poetic is something poetic about Ray Palpatine, and seeing a character like Omega, who I've kind of likened to part of Ray, like the vulnerable kid learning to actually fend for herself, um, and be the hero in the story. I mean, that's a trope in Star Wars, but um, you know, having this influence on Ray in the end is in Ray's existence. So it's Star Wars, man. It's a canon, poetic.
Yeah, this opens up
Yeah.
the door for a lot of things.
Mhm. Yeah.
One of my first thoughts was, hey, this is spin-off material.
Yeah.
You're not gonna introduce something this late in the game that she's Force sensitive in the final season and
Mm.
just expect fans to be okay with not getting everything that we would expect, right? Like they're not gonna have
Mhm.
they only have okay, we're down to what 12 episodes now. I think there's 15 total. They're not going to go through the whole idea of exploring her Force sensitivity and all. I think we're gonna
Yeah.
get kind of a backdoor pilot to her encountering another Force sensitive that will begin to maybe instruct her on how to harness and channel her abilities. We don't know how strong her abilities are going to be. We don't know if she's a Sabine Wren level or a Ray level or somewhere in the middle.
I'm
And
putting it a first sensitive person we know is showing up in this series.
yes, exactly. And that's where my
Yeah.
thoughts are going to is that very character. Them two could go off
The
into
Adventures.
sunrise, and then
Yeah.
they say come back and next year for the continued adventures of Omega and whoever. And
I'm seeing Ventures. Ventures. Is
yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
seeing. Similar kind of hair thing going on a little bit.
yeah.
Speculating. That's just me being silly. All right. Do you have anything more to say about Bad Batch season 3, episodes 1 to 3?
I think the action was
Yeah.
fantastic. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
seeing V-Wings in action,
Yeah. It was cool.
seeing the clone commandos, seeing Scorch again. Maybe we'll see the other
I still don't like
Republic
the design of
commandos.
those helmets, though. I still don't. Yeah. Something off
Oh,
about them, but you played the game, right?
with the blue glow, I love that. It's
Or
iconic.
just the whole the shape of the helmet.
Okay.
I don't. Did you play like Republic Commando and Imperial
Oh
Commando?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I
so yeah,
rented the game back from
nice,
Blockbuster back in the
nice.
day. Played it
Speaking of
all in one
Carol
weekend.
Danvers, there we go. Fun times. All right. Yeah. So that's it. We usually talk about comics, guys. Just anyone chiming in and joining in. We usually exclusively talk about comics and review comics that come out, but only one book today. Only one book next week. Thrawn Alliance is number 2, and that's an adaptation of a novel. The adaptation we are doing by Jody Houser and Tim Zahn. I just realized Jody Houser is doing the Kenobi adaptation.
Yeah.
So maybe the script itself is probably half decent. I mean, no shade to Rodney Barnes, but yeah, Thrawn Alliance is number 2. I guess we're still, are we still in Batu? Are we going back to Batu? I don't know where I'm here on the story, but I'm
So
sure
yeah,
we'll
I mean,
find out.
last we left off, Thrawn and Vader were in that duel
Mhm.
with all those. I almost call them pikes for a moment, but there's different unknown regions, aliens,
Right.
and they were getting gassed up. There's this toxic gas that got released. They were trying to escape.
Right. Yeah. For some reason, my mind, maybe because I'm dyed in the wool prequelist, my mind always is like the Anakin Padme Thrawn part of the story, which is
Hmm.
part of the story. I mean, it's half the story, kind of,
Oh yeah,
but it really is a Vader Thrawn novel because it's setting up part of Rebels. But yeah, excited for that. Excited for that. I don't know what anything else you're looking forward to in Thrawn Alliance is number 2.
yeah. One thing, Grisk. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know if they
Yeah,
get to that
when are we
point in the
getting there?
story, but like I've been waiting on bated breath to get an official image of those darn things already.
Was that announced somewhere that we would get this official image? Or
Yes, I think it
okay,
was actually Jodie Houser herself because at one
okay.
point they showed that comic preview for the
Mhm.
first issue, and everybody was convinced that those were the Grisk.
Yeah,
And then somebody else, I don't know if it was her or somebody else said, no, those aren't the Grisk, but they're coming or something like
yeah.
that.
So we'll see. I mean, that might be a bait and switch. I mean, it already was, but that might be. I don't know. I won't hold my breath then. But
Well,
yeah,
that's the thing,
it'll be
though,
cool.
is that they play such a heavy role in this novel. There's no way that they can't be in it.
True.
Like, there's that
True.
whole sequence with Rook on board that transporter,
Mhm.
and he's fighting off like a legion of those Grisk at one time.
There's a way to kind of have them in the shade or shadows or something. I don't know.
It's like,
It's when we
stop
get
being,
to
yeah.
it's when we get the ascendancy gooks, then we have to see them. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we probably will. That's
We
probably
probably
true.
will with how
Yeah.
well Thrawn with Ahsoka. They probably want to do all those books and adaptations
Yeah.
and let them and support them because I'd
Let
rather
them
have
do
more of
the
these.
novel adaptations. Yes.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
rather have more of these than just a truncated version of a series I've already seen.
Yes. Um, fun joke I made with the Star Wars Splash guys. So you can subscribe to comics directly. Definitely. I mean, support local. Go to your local shop. Get this in your pull list. But if you do have the option of subscribing to comics, and they were showing on their Facebook, I guess, saying, yeah, for Maul,
Yeah,
Black, White,
Black, White,
Red,
and Red.
and the Ahsoka adaptation, you can subscribe to those directly if you want. And so I said, sure for Maul, but I already subscribe to Disney Plus. So I don't subscribe to the Ahsoka one.
Ow!
That's all I'll say about that. That's it. I promise I'm done bashing those
All right,
adaptations.
well. At least we have an artist that I think people won't be as
Yes.
polarized by on that one with the
Who's doing the
Obi-Wan
art for
one.
that one?
I'm not sure, but I know people really do not
Yeah.
like the guy that's on board with Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean that'll be definitely all for. I'll probably get a good Anakin cover for that Ahsoka one. But anyway, we're kind of rambling here. Yes, Thrawn Alliance is number 2. Definitely go to your local comic book shop, support local, and grab that in your pull list. Get back to the plugs again. Yeah, Chris, thanks for another week of comics. Wednesday of comics. Where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me over on youtube.com/StarRaptor, just as it's spelled here on my username. I'll be talking about Bad Batch most likely for the next several weeks, as well as my own podcast I do every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Where, yeah, literally the next couple of weeks we're just doing deep dives in each Bad Batch episode. So if you want some companion videos, if you want some longer form discussion as well, then go ahead and subscribe to youtube.com/StarRaptor. I also have my blog, which is starraptor.substack.com. I have some things in the works for that for the month of February, as well as Twitter. You can follow me there for my gaming rants and retweets of cool video games and different things. Star Wars, of course, over there.
Nice. Yeah, I know for a fact the flagship tomorrow night is gonna chat all about these episodes right here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, the Star Wars Underworld podcast on the Ion Cannon podcast again, as I mentioned, on this coming Monday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Joel and I are talking about The Last Jedi because we want to. We're gonna just go in and just chat about The Last Jedi. Go through it because we haven't done a deep dive on that film specifically yet. I don't think so. We're gonna, we want it for our 100th episode. Why not? Do that, and then you can follow us right here on Tractor Beam next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And you can follow us, of course, at Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads for now. Some things in the works again. We'll get that going. We'll get that going. Don't worry. You can follow my personals, Instagram and Threads at MNEUG1138. Yeah, I got some Star Wars in there. Got some. We got some soccer in there. Got some Taylor Swift in there. Got some Star Trek in there. Maybe. Toronto Comic Con. Toronto Comic Con is a few weeks away. Or is a month away. So definitely gonna have some things in the works for that. You can follow me on Twitter as well. You can also follow me on Twitter at NEUG485. You got some tweets going on there too. So yeah, definitely. But for all your Star Wars needs, at Ion Cannon Pod and at Star Raptor and at the SWU, again, go to your local shop to grab Thrawn Alliances #2. Chris, it's been fun. Till next week. Happy reading.